you buy an integrated amp, by consequence of wanting it to do pre and power duties in one box, you probably want it to do other things as well, such as a DAC or a streamer. With Hegel's H120, it does all of these things, and as they are reputed for producing great sounding amplifiers, what can we find out about this $3,000 one, which is the newest in the Hegel integrated lineup? And on this subject of sound from Hegel's Nordic origins, considering the British have such a strong hi-fi amplifier heritage with brands like Cyrus or Name, it's a bit like the Vikings are coming over again to challenge our Anglo-Saxon heritage. And I'd say good luck, because the winner of all of this is audio and music and consumers. Can I make an analogy to the Vikings? Well, it was over 1,000 years ago, and my auntie is Norwegian too, so I'll probably just about get away with it. But the point I'm trying to make is the Hegel is punching above some British amps at the moment if sound quality is the main consideration. So, for example, if we were to compare the sound of this Hegel to, say, a similar priced Name Unity Atom, on paper specs alone, that is, admittedly the Name has tidal integration built in, which one would be the winner? By the same token of making all these comparisons to other amps, of course, I'll be honest enough to say I haven't put this Hegel against similarly priced amps with similar features and specs. And the reason, because I don't have similar brand amps at the moment. I can't compare what I don't have. So I did do a Marantz PM7000N and Cyrus 1 cast review. These are two well-known integrated amplifiers around 1,000, and the Hegel is quite a bit better sonically, unsurprisingly perhaps for price. We'll come on to that in a minute, but I should say none of these other brands will mind me saying too that doubling price, improves performance. I'm also comparing this Hegel to my Cyrus Signature amplification, which is around 7,000. And whilst I'm a bit averse to keep mentioning these amps, as regular viewers will know I do need to benchmark systems, and that's why I do always mention other amplifiers. So it's not a case of me just trying to over promote things or flog a dead horse or just show brand loyalty. Looking at the case, it's a slimmed down version of their other integrated amps. So you've got the H190, H390 and the largest H590, which all get a lot bigger as you go up in size, and you'd expect that because you need bigger transformers, bigger components, etc. Now this H120 uses a ply sheet wraparound case, and it's got loads of venting holes in the top, as you can see, but like its more expensive siblings, it also has a bead blasted front aluminium bezel. And as I've said before, this basically involves firing little beads at the aluminium to create this lovely pitted effect. Now, I actually have the more expensive Hegel Mohican CD player at the moment, which I'm trying it with, and that uses bead blasting over its entire case. Being that Hegel are Norwegian, Scandinavian design is often minimalist in its approach. We've all been into IKEA, although IKEA is Swedish. You've got a simple case and front display with this H120 and the logo as well. And nice little round dials are simple too, again made from aluminium and bee blasted. There is no, you can see, cheap plastic here. You'll see that the case rests on these thick rubber sorbothane type feet, in contrast to the Mohican, which uses machine feet. When you first get this amp out of the box, you're looking around thinking, where the hell is the power switch? It's only when you move your hand on the underside you notice this big green button. It's purposeful and intentioned, and it looks a bit like a power button you'll find on your electricity fuse box in your house. Around the back you've got the normal suite of balanced inputs and unbalanced inputs for analog sources, as well as variable line level output, so you could use as a preamp with a power amp, plus a single set of left and right speaker terminals. On the other side, you've got a whole host of digital inputs from coaxial, optical and USB, obviously for connecting up your laptops, servers or other digital USB sources. This isn't a pen drive type USB connection, by the way. There are no Wi-Fi aerials too, so it has to take its network connectivity over fixed Ethernet. The remote control you get is a brilliantly solid affair. It's not, you know, cheap and nasty like some of these plastic remotes. You feel like you're being shortchanged with their quality, and that they look like they belong with, you know, an Amazon Fire TV. And I just don't know why hi-fi manufacturers don't improve the quality of remotes. I don't like to make it the be all and end all, because it's often one of those things that gets picked up as being a niggle and people complain about, and it's not as important as some other aspects of the design. But sometimes you just want a bit of like rigidity and quality, and why don't manufacturers do that with remotes? I've said before too that I love the way that Hegel put together packaging and manuals, and it's another brilliantly simple manual that comes with this amp. It's awesome. So what this is all really coming down to is that the form factor and design of the H120 is just a kind of proper audiophile's delight, because not only is it conventional looking, but you get a feel from this and all these other features. It's designed with function and sound in mind. And when you start looking at its technical design, things go up another notch. And that's before you look at its specs. So for people who like specs, here they are. One aspect of the design of the H120 is it uses two toroidal transformers. One is to help in auto-on functions for streaming, and you can see it through the perforated top panel, as well as the other main transformer for audio purposes. In a minute we'll take the case off and we'll let you have a look inside so you can see what I'm talking about. Another thing to say is that the DAC is an AKM type, which isn't as highly spec'd as the H390 and H590, but it clearly performs well as a package, and that's the means by which we should look at it. Now, Hegel's Sound Engine 2 amp technology is the kind of bee's knees, nuts and bolts, or even dog's bollocks of the design, though rather than get all techie with whether this is better than conventional design or not, because I'd then have to present both sides of the argument, and this is way outside of the scope of my knowledge, in the interest of balanced reporting too, I'll post a video in the end screen to an explanation from Hegel's bent halter. So if you want to involve yourself with the tech, you can. In short, it's a different technology to the feedback loops you find in most amplifiers and is unique to Hegel, which they have patented and invested, on all accounts, millions of dollars in. By the way, I like to keep my hi-fi reviews away from technical debate as to what is best, because for every technical explanation as to why a product performs well, there will be a counter technical explanation, you betcha, based on a different technical ethos. So that's why I always like to keep my reviews comparison based and in the real world. And as I've explained in my video about being a subjective or objective audiophile, comparison based reviews have objectivity by relative comparison. So it has to be about making comparison. What is much easier to relate to specs for people like me and you who mainly aren't hi-fi electronics engineers, insofar as why I can honestly say Hegel amplifiers seem to sound so good against lots of others, living with this amp for around a month now, trying with various speakers from my PMCs, some neat Iota alphas and definitive technology demand D11s, is two words, and those two words are damping and factor. So damping factor is about controlling a driver in lay terms, and the more a driver is under control by stopping and starting quickly, like a bass note extends and then comes back down again, the more real the music will sound. And it not only applies to bass but mid-range and other areas of the music as well. Class D amps tend to have a high damping factor, and the Hegel is, as I understand it, a type of hybrid design which utilises benefits of Class A and Class AB amplification, but it takes the benefits that Class D amplification have in having high damping factor. With the neat Iota alphas I've tested, the fact the bass driver, being the 0.5 in the 2.5 way design, points down at the ground, it means that you have to keep good control of bass. Otherwise you get, that boomy bass you always get. And I can't really say the bass was boomy with the Marantz I've mentioned, but it's definitely under better control with this Hegel by some margin. So whether I can apply damping factor credentials to actually hearing this tighter bass is, I guess it's a tough one, because I'm sure other aspects of the design of this Hegel probably comes into proceedings too. But it's undeniably more control when you spend this sort of money on the H120. And to this end, I don't think damping factor is a frivolous consideration at all. Streaming wise, it does allow you to pull off UPnP streams from your network PC drive or network attached storage drive. My article in Streaming in the card explains all if you need help there, but basically you use a third-party app to get music going on the Hegel as a music renderer, if you're using the network connection, that is, because the Hegel doesn't have its own app. That's if you're going to be sending music to it in native resolution for Tidal or Qobuz services or off your own drive, if you aren't using lesser quality AirPlay or Spotify Connect, which the H120 is compatible with. Spotify Connect integration uses its own app which recognises the Hegel, and AirPlay obviously down converts high-res streams to CD quality over the network and in Room 2, so beware of that. Of course, Spotify Connect has a maximum bitrate of 320 kilobits a second. So Hegel say in their literature that they use the app called Bubble UPnP to control music in their, their online guides, which I posted links to in my article on my website, by the way, and I'll also post links to in the comments field of this video. It's available on the Android platform, and I've used it before, and it's pretty decent for a freebie, especially since you can link your Tidal and Qobuz accounts and play high-res content. On the H120 screen, you'll notice DMR comes up, which stands for Digital Media Renderer, in this case Bubble UPnP obviously. Now interestingly, I could actually use the USB output from my Innuos music server to the Hegel as renderer to exploit full fat sample rates, as you can switch the Innuos from a Roon server, as I normally use it as, to UPnP server. I should point out that the Hegel uses the original AirPlay config, which isn't disadvantageous to audiophiles, because whether AirPlay 1 or 2, no sound quality disadvantage or advantage, depending on how you look at it, is conferred. Hegel have actually told me that they have plans to make the H120 Roon ready, which means that you won't be using AirPlay in Roon, because you could then take advantage of the full high-res quality that Roon's RAT sound transmitting protocol gives you. A neat feature is the Hegel will automatically switch input to the network when you say send it music over AirPlay. Apps like Bubble UPnP are good, but taking strides to Roon is going to be very welcome, being it's the kind of granddaddy of streaming apps. And it should be on every audiophile's wish list, because it just takes other music interfaces to the cleaners, let's face it. Switching from my Cyrus Signature pre and power amps with the PMCs, it's surprising how this Hegel just still holds on to the way it grips the music with bass and the overall authority over the music. It's like it just doesn't want to let go. It's got so much control over the music. Soundstage is very big, considering the dynamic power of this amp of 75 watts into only 8 ohms, about half of what my Cyrus Monos are giving me, and translating it into a little bit smaller soundstage and less tonal mass, but not by a lot. The point that I'm trying to make is this amp doesn't let the side down, considering the modest power output, and that's a big take home from this review. And I know power output shouldn't necessarily be kind of measure of how sonically good an amplifier is, but a big main trait of this amp is this punching above character. Everywhere else it's competing with the Cyrus gear by some margin, particularly better with speed and dynamic on and off prowess with electronica. Because the mids aren't so pinpointed with the Cyrus, everything seems to be a bit looser and less precise. A percussive track that I played on Ultramarine's Signals into Space album, which is a great ambient type album mixed with jazz influences, by the way, showed off these precise elements. So by any estimation, this is a terrific amplifier for the money, And again, I'm not just saying that because, you know, I'm doing a review of it. I'm comparing it to gear. I'm honestly comparing this to gear that's more expensive. Another thing to say there too is that there's this sense that mid-range has an airiness and spaciousness that the Cyrus amps just don't have. They can't conjure, which is perhaps more of a taste thing, I think. So, you know, conceivably better and preference are mixed here. But for vocals, when I was listening to a bit of Nat King Cole, you get impressed by this extreme transparency. You know, the Cyrus amps that I've got are more relaxed tonally in the mid bass, which I never thought, you know, I'd actually be saying, considering their reputation and the way they're known for being very detailed amplifiers. But I thought the Hegel really does let you enjoy music. It's, you know, it's making me wonder what the hell is the H390 like for less money than a Cyrus Signature system. When I swapped over to the neat Iota alphas and listened at modest volumes, the detail's all still there with the Cyrus gear and the Hegel too, but the expansiveness of the Cyrus Signature system sound staging gives similar quality to the Hegel's better quality detail and nicer transparency. So I think you are going to have to pick decent speakers, not that the neats aren't, but they're just at a different price level to the PMCs, you know, to exploit the full benefit of this amplifier. Now, one question you're going to ask me is, you know, what's the DAC like in it? And, you know, I can report on that because in changing the DAC to a Qutest, the chord I found was wider compared to the kind of more reined in soundstage of this Hegel. So too was a wider soundstage found with an RME ADI2 DAC FS I have, which is an excellent DAC, by the way. But the chord is, you know, is a much more expensive DAC. So is the RME, and you know, we often see compromises in DACs on all-in-ones to some degree. Proprietary box DACs like the Chord, who are, let's face it, one of the market leaders, albeit I've often thought they are pretty expensive for what they are. The point I'm trying to say here is that this isn't really any kind of criticism of the Hegel, since the Chord's DAC is over half the Hegel's price, and only so much is possible at a certain price, as we tend to see with DACs in all-in-ones, you know, in streaming integrated. But since you've got RCA and balanced inputs we mentioned, it does obviously allow you an upgrade route if you wanted to do that. The amplifier of this in this Hegel is more than good enough to do that. And where it obviously excels is clearly in the amplifier domain, and where Hegel, you know, appear to have spent their money. So I'm not by any means downplaying its DAC, because as a package it works, and in describing these small differences that exist, they are exactly that, small differences. Amps like this forever impute notions that the smart money isn't to go crazy on audiophile gear, it's to buy this stuff. And I know I sound like a broken record on this sometimes, but it's not to be understated or underestimated. And in other words, the smart person, no matter their wallet, wants value for money as much as the next man. You know, clearly spending on something like this amp gets you big opportunity costs even at this price. But, you know, and it could be, you know, spending on a fancy TV or whatever. But to anyone wanting good priced audio that performs well and where you won't get robbed, this is kind of everyman audiophile hi-fi that everyone should test. It's going to appeal to every cost-conscious and performance-steered audiophile. Thanks for watching my film, and if you like what I do and my approach, please remember to hit subscribe, do whatever you do with the bell thing. I'll post a link to the Hegel Mohican CD player film I did in the end screen too.